So since I could not find that specialty part, what I've been having to do is jam the fork of this thing in between as low as I could go on the spring here. So jam that fork in, and then you can use the leverage to compress the spring. Now I tried using one of these things from like a Briggs & Stratton engine. The problem with that is these have real tiny, I don't know if you can call those teeth, but the things that grab the spring, and you know, they just tend to slip off and you just get mad at it. So with this big tool over here, you can compress that spring, and then really once it's compressed, you can use one hand to hold that and then get a screwdriver, a flathead, and then drive it in to kind of push. Let's see, this is on there like that. So with the spring tension removed from that, you just have to kind of push that at both ends, and then it falls off. Once you do that, once you get that spring tension off there, then the valve can actually go all the way up here until it hits the very bottom of the valve guide. I'm not sure how well you can see it in here. Let me look at this other one. So until it hits, here, let me put this over here, until it hits this bottom piece. Now, in trying to get the fork tool to engage this bottom piece here, as you can see, I've broken off the bottom of several of these. This stuff is very brittle, breaks very easily. Fortunately, I believe all of this can be replaced. So basically get that up there, and then get the valve as open as it can be right up until the mushroom head hits the bottom of that. If you go to prying on it, trying to pull the valve out, then all it's going to do is split that valve guide and break it off, and now you've got to go chase that down. So don't do that, and get it as high as it can. And then I don't have any that I have open like that, but then the idea is to take something like a bent chisel and work it around the edge of the valve and get down there to where it hits the valve guide itself. And like I said, I should have started this video whenever I worked on this other one, but I mean, just imagine this thing being all the way up, and then you work this down in there and then hit it with the sledge. You just want to make sure that, you know, your force of your impact is going to the top of the valve guide and not into the valve, certainly not into the block. So you can see, let me get one that's not broken. You can maybe see some of the chisel impacts on that as I was driving it down. So once you drive that down enough, you can get a pair of vice grips or something on these little tabs on these retainers and pull those out. And I've noticed that if you put the vice grips on there first and then hammer down on the valve guide, then as soon as it's loose, the retainer clip, just from the weight of the vice grips on it, will just fall out. So once that is done, there's a couple of ways to go about this. Of course, the factory recommended way is to use the tool and drive up the entire assembly with the valve guide and valve and everything off the top. That doesn't always work. We don't have the tool. A lot of times, you can have all this force with the impact on the chisel to drive it down in there, but then it takes a lot to come back up. One way that I tried with this one is to wedge a piece of brass or aluminum or something in there, something that's not going to damage anything. And then just use the camshaft to push the valve and valve seat and everything up. Of course, you run the risk of breaking the valve guide if you do that, which again, I mean, I don't think that'll be a problem. I think these can be replaced. So anyway, that's one way of doing it. Depending on how broken it is, if you have broken them, then of course you can just use a chisel and just drive it all down in there, which is what I had to do on some of these. Yeah, you're not going to be able to, oops. See, I mean, this is the entire valve guide that's not broken, so there's no way to drive it down in there unless the bottom of it is broken off. So again, you want to push that up, use a camshaft, use something with some leverage action. I think on one of these, I used the fork tool as a claw hammer with the top of the valve. Of course, you know, I bent the valve and eventually broke it. But I did get the guide and everything out of the block. So yeah, I mean, I'm not really seeing a way to do this without sacrificing the valves, the springs, the valve guides. Of course, all of that can be replaced. Generally, the block can't. I mean, if the block's busted, you know, why are you doing this in the first place? You know, try not to damage the seats, which I may have already done, but I think we can probably clean those up. But yeah, like I said, the V8 cousin of this also has these split valve guides. In its earlier years, everybody hates them. Any video I see, they're replacing them with the ones that are single and not split. I guess they have less problems with those. And this is a Ford 1946 Ford G Series. I think it's a 221 or 223 cubic inch engine. It was the, I think it was on the cheap version of stuff. But I mean, the V8 made 100 horsepower. This makes 90, so who knows? Anyway, hopefully somebody will find this useful.